It's the midweek edition of Business Morning on Channels Television. You're welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's look at what's in the news. Oil prices consolidated strong overnight gains as a bullish outlook for U.S. fuel demand outweighed concerns about mobility curbs in Asia with the spread of the highly infectious COVID-19 Delta variant. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 6 cents to $68.85 a barrel, adding a 2.7% jump on Tuesday. Brent crude futures inched up 3 cents to $70.66 a barrel, following a 2.3% gain from Tuesday. Data from the American Petroleum Institute showed U.S. crude stocks fell by 816,000 barrels, and gasoline stocks fell by 1.1 million barrels in the week ended August 6th. Weekly figures from the EIA are due later today. The EIA's monthly report showed that the need for supply from OPEC will exceed OPEC supply by 1 million barrels per day in the third quarter and by 300,000 barrels per day in the fourth quarter of 2021.
And back here in Nigeria, the sum of 512.23 billion naira was generated as value-added tax to the federal government in the second quarter of 2021. That's according to the latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS report shows that the amount represents a 3.2% increase when compared to 496.4 billion naira generated in the first quarter of this year.
And the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has been speaking of the government's intervention to reflate the economy following the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. At a meeting in Abuja, Mrs. Ahmed explains that part of the plan is the introduction of a 2021 Finance Act, which targets a reduction in the cost of governance, improving human capital development and enhancing revenue generation.
Government will also continue to make critical investments in sectors including agriculture, infrastructure, health, and education. To do so, we must sustainably address the long-standing challenge of domestic revenue mobilization. We have been doing this in part through the continuous implementation of the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative and also through the continued incremental fiscal reforms via the instruments of the Finance Acts. We have so far done Finance Acts 2019 and 2020, and we're currently working on Finance Act 2021. These acts are also working to reduce the cost of governance on a broad basis. We're also working very collaboratively across ministries, departments, and agencies, and with the state and local governments to address financing for cross-cutting issues. This includes working to significantly reduce poverty and harness our demographic dividend to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth, personally through job creation, by enabling the private sector and prioritizing human capital development.
And a leading automobile company, Charis Motors, has introduced the all-new Jaguar FPace into the Nigerian market. The latest edition of the Jaguar brand was unveiled to the media alongside the new Land Rover Discovery Sport at the company's head office in Lagos. Both sports utility vehicles designed to meet the quest of car enthusiasts and thrill its customers in Nigeria. This is how the event went.
As the exclusive representative of the Jaguar Land Rover brands in Nigeria, Charis Motors once again launches two latest models from its partners, the new Jaguar FPace. And the Discovery Sport, the first in a new generation of Land Rover sport utility vehicle. These are technologically advanced sports cars crafted to offer luxury and dynamic performance at every journey. The Deputy General Manager, Ufoma Umokoro, showcases unique selling propositions to media representatives.
It's a mild hybrid. Mild hybrid means that you use less fuel.
We are the only ones in the market that have a functional satellite navigation system working in the car. We are also offering new type of lights in the market. Very few brands have it now, the matrix LED lights. The cars also come in with perforated seats so that the AC comes through the seats. The cars are also serviced once in a year. or 10,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. I think these are basically the first unique things that strike you when you look at the Jaguar or the Land Rover Discovery.
Charis Motors is confident that the new Jaguar and Land Rover Discovery models will equally do well.
For us in Charis Motors, we've had a very long, robust relationship representing these fantastic brands over the years in the Nigerian market. So you can always assess any of this vehicle without actually breaking the bank. And that tells you that if you deposit a 10 to 30%, we are good to go as an owner of the new Jaguar FPace. We are also going to be a proud owner of the new Discovery Sport.
Unique after-sales services also comes with the launch of the two new variants.
We subject our technicians to the same training that technicians all over the world are subjected to, and more particularly for our own environment. So we are well equipped to give you peace of mind as you purchase any of these new model variants. The parts are available, and the material, engine oil, filters that are required for the main service are readily available.
As part of the media reveal event, journalists are taken on a tour of the Jaguar Land Rover workshop.
And 650 billion US dollars, the largest SDR allocation in the history of IMF, and a shot in the arm for the global economy at a time of unprecedented crisis. This has been the news for about a week now, but what are the conditions attached to this special drawing right? Nigeria has $3.35 billion, which it will get on the 23rd of August. Will it affect the country's debt stock? What about its foreign exchange liquidity? We have Ari Eisen, IMF resident representative for Nigeria, to shed more light on this. Good morning, Mr. Eisen. Good to have you on the show.
Morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to come.
You're welcome. So your document shows that the fund is shared in proportion to existing quotas of the countries. How is this quota determined?
So the quota system of the IMF, which is revised from time to time, reflects the participation in the global GDP of every specific country. So in the case of Nigeria, it has a quota equivalent to 2.45 billion SDRs, which is the equivalent depending on the exchange rate, but the SDR is a basket of 5 currencies. Every day is changing, but it's about, as you said earlier, $3.35 billion, which is going to be very helpful to Nigeria. We are in an unprecedented crisis and require unprecedented efforts from the global community, and the International Monetary Fund is in the forefront in boosting the liquidity of our member countries, and it's an unprecedented amount. The last time was after the global financial crisis, $250 billion. Now it's $650 billion to help our countries face the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, Mr. Eisen, looking at Nigeria's quota now, are there conditions attached? For instance, countries that use their SDRs will incur net charges on the difference between their cumulative SDR allocations and their SDR holdings. Can you shed more light on this?
That's a very good question. First of all, we are saying that countries, the 190 member countries, including Nigeria, are sovereign to make the decisions on how to use those SDRs. The way it works is that the IMF, the Board of Governors, approved on August the 2nd the disbursement, which should take place on August 23rd. And these SDRs will go directly to the Central Bank of Nigeria, and they represent about 10% of the stock of international reserves of the Central Bank at the moment. And they will be at the disposal of the Central Bank, those SDRs, as of August 23rd. So the basic condition is that after it reaches the Central Bank, then the country will decide what use to make out of all those resources. What we are saying, and we are calling to partners, not only the governments of the various member countries, but civil society, development partners, international and domestic partners, to work with us to ensure that those funds are used wisely in an effective way to the benefit of the country and to the benefit of the Nigerian people. This is mostly what we are insisting, typically following very adequate and good transparency rules and accountability and responsibility.
Okay, so you're calling on civil society groups and all that. So you are interested in that the fund is used effectively, but how do you ensure, for instance, do you ask to say what percentage is used for what, or do you just wait to get news maybe from civil society groups and other individuals or groups who can share the information with you?
The government is sovereign to decide on the final use. But we work with partners in discussions with the government to be able to see how the channeling of the funds will be made. The funds are not earmarked. It's really going to the central bank to boost liquidity. This is a very precious resource. It's a reserve asset, typically held by central banks, SDRs. They cannot be used for transactions. They will have to be converted to other currencies if that is the decision, and they will have to be on lent depending on discussions in between government and the central bank. So all these, the sovereign will decide the best use of those funds. But we have trust with the government of Nigeria and with Nigeria as a country that the best use can be ensured, and we want to support the transparent and good use of the resources, as we have been doing, by the way, since our latest disbursement of funds during the last year with the RFI, to stimulate and encourage transparency and responsibility in the use of the resources from the International Monetary Fund. And by the way, this is not only to Nigeria, it's to the 190 countries of our membership.
All right, Mr. Eisen, what are the implications of this statement here? It said members that receive SDRs, either under a voluntary transaction or by designation, have to provide foreign exchange in exchange, effectively replacing one reserve asset by another. Can you explain this, please? Yes.
So the injection of those SDRs is a long-term liability of the country vis-à-vis the IMF. But it doesn't increase the debt burden of the country. If the central bank decides to hold those SDRs, it will be an asset to the central bank, it will be a long-term liability. The interest rate, which is 0.05% today on those SDRs, will be a revenue to the central bank, but also an expense of the central bank. So it basically washes out. If the SDRs are converted to other currencies, or if it's actually on lent to the treasury, then the long-term liability remains, and the interest rate on the SDRs continues to hold, meaning that the central bank will still need to service that long-term liability, long-term debt. But of course, it will depend on the arrangement. If those funds are used, how the central bank will be repaid on those funds to be able to continue servicing that long-term liability. So this is more or less what's going to happen. If the central bank decides to switch the SDRs, which is a reserve asset, to other currencies and still hold those currencies that it's holding in treasury bonds, for example, or other government bonds in the various currencies, we will earn revenue, we will earn interest, and the SDRs that are long liability will need to be serviced as well and pay, as I said, 0.05% interest, which is almost zero.
Okay, so we know that the IMF is also exploring other options to help poorer and more vulnerable countries in their recovery efforts. Could you let us in on some of these other efforts?
Absolutely. It's very important to know that out of the $650 billion to be disbursed, 42% goes to developing nations, low-income countries, and emerging economies. 58% go to wealthier countries. So from those advanced economies, those who have a strong balance of payments, strong buffers, and high stock of international reserves, there is an effort, ongoing effort, and the managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, has said time and again, is in touch with other member countries that have those strong positions to see if resources can be channeled to increase the amount that would go to developing nations. And there are many ways of doing that. One of the ways is using our existing trusts and facilities that could receive additional funding. One of them is the Poverty Reduction Growth Trust, PRGT, that is used to finance programs that the IMF has with various developing countries.
All right, but can SDRs be traded between member countries?
Yes, the way it happens is that SDRs can be converted by other countries who accept in their central banks voluntarily the SDR, and then other central banks can give other currencies to the central bank that wants to trade. And that's how precisely this is done, on a voluntary basis. And the IMF can also be a facilitator in between central banks to exchange those SDRs for other currencies.
Okay, so what happens when a country, a member country, sells their SDR? What happens? Do you pay some kind of interest?
What happens when it sells its SDR?
Yeah. That's when you trade your SDR with another member state.
Well,
will it incur some kind of interest or something?
No, as I said, the SDRs will go to the other country. In exchange, the other country will give currencies, dollars, pounds, yuans, yens.
Okay.
So the central bank would have lost the SDR asset and would have exchanged for different assets in its international reserves.
Okay. All right.
The other country who received the SDRs will then be entitled to the interest rate paid on that SDRs.
Right.
And the central bank who gave up on the SDRs will have the long-term liability received for having received that, and will have to service the other country that is the final recipient of the SDRs.
Okay. All right. So I mean, let's look at.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you need just a second. You need to look into the balance sheets and who is holding what, and where the obligations are vis-a-vis the fund and vis-a-vis each other. But the idea is that there is a voluntary way that SDRs can be exchanged by other central banks to other currencies. I hope that is clear.
Yeah,
yes. So I mean, away from the SDR now, let's get IMF's perspective with the threat of the Delta variant now in the country, in the world, globally now. Does the IMF see a shift in global growth forecasts, you know, that has been already put in place by now, and now we see this Delta variant of COVID-19, you know, causing some restrictions, reintroduction of some restriction and reduction in demand in some parts of the world. Do you see a change in the global growth forecasts?
The global forecast for growth has been recently revised upwards, in fact, for 2022 and maintained for 2021. I think it's too early to judge whether this global forecast for growth needs to be revised. We are still monitoring very closely the situation and how governments are reacting to the Delta variant. and if restrictions are going to be increased. So far, vaccination is the main focus of the global efforts on the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been at the forefront, together with our development partners worldwide, in trying to facilitate the use of surplus of vaccines in some countries to be redirected to other countries. And I was very glad to see some donations of vaccines even to Nigeria recently from the United States, some Moderna vaccines that came to the country. So this needs to continue. More surplus in other countries should be channeled to countries who need vaccines and to increase vaccination globally. This is a global issue, and it requires a global solution.
Global efforts,
so we want to stimulate, encourage, and participate very strong collaboration among our member countries to get this pandemic defeated, to the benefit of the global economy, to the health of our global citizens. And we are at the forefront with a lot of pride helping our member countries in this fight. And the global injection, as you said very well, is a shot in the arm. Is to give liquidity, is to boost the capability of our countries to finance, for example, vaccines if they need additional vaccines. We want our member countries to be able to do that.
All right, Mr. Ison, thank you so much for sharing. We can see that the IMF is really in the forefront of spreading the vaccination program and all that. Mr. Ari Ison is the IMF resident representative for Nigeria, and he joined us on the program to speak mostly about the SDR that will be effective from the 23rd of August. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we'll take a break now. When we come back, FX Commodities Market Update is next. Join us then.
And now for FX Commodities Update. FX seems to be getting the attention of more investors as their record shows an 80% increase in the number of deals in the week ended 9th of August. Let's bring in Michael Martin now to bring us up to speed. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Ladi. Good morning. Thank you for having me once again.
Great to have you. So let's have a recap of what happened in the week.
All right, thank you very much. So this is the commodities market summary. And if you look at the table in front of you, you would see that the total value of transactions traded on the exchange fell by 66.67% from around 0.39 billion naira to close the trading week at 0.13 billion naira. The total number of contracts traded on the exchange also fell by 80.04% from 18,982 contracts to close the trading week at 3,788 contracts. The total number of deals, however, went up by 80% from 20 deals to close the trading week at 36 deals. We also saw green with the ACI, which is the FX Commodities Index, which went up on 454.70 to close the trading week at 459.22. The AFEX Export Index also went up by 5.73%, which went up of 173.33 points to close the trading week at 176.61 points. With regards to the volume of contracts traded on the exchange in the week under consideration, we saw a general decline in the volume of contracts traded, with the biggest changes happening with maize, which fell from 15,506 contracts to close the trading week at 541 contracts. Which we also saw changes in sorghum, which traded from 1,682 contracts last week to trading no contracts this week. The similar thing also happened with ginger. We traded 492 contracts last week to trading no contracts this week. And the only change that we saw with regards to the volume of contracts traded was in soybean, which went up from 1,279 deals to close the trading week at 3,237 deals. With regards to the price changes at the exchange, we generally saw an increase with maize and soybean, with maize going up by 3.07%, gaining 676 naira in the contract value to close to close the trading week at 22,676 naira per contract. The other change with regards to commodities was also with soybean, which went up by 0.28%, gaining 99 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 35,082 naira per contract. And last but certainly not least, we have the fair trade exchange traded commodity, which went up by 3.07%, gaining 473 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 15,400 naira per contract. So that's largely all of the price changes and volume changes that we saw occur in the commodities market in the week under consideration. And as we always say, if you want to know more about the commodities market, you can always go to our website, which is www.afxnigeria.com. And if you want to get started trading commodities, whether that's spot contracts, fixed income note, or even exchange traded commodities, you can always download our app, which is available on Apple and also on Android.
All right, Michael. Well, thank you for the summary. But we see that a lot of news is around cocoa at this time. Currently, just about a week ago, we had the news that Nigeria's cocoa export to the United States increased by over 300%. Top producers, Ivory Coast and Ghana, have signed cooperation. A whole lot is happening. We have a new variant of cocoa, but on the FX exchange, we saw that the price is unchanged. What happened? We thought with a lot of activities, we'll see some movements in the price.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So just to give a bit of an overview as regards what Nigeria is currently doing with regards to cocoa exports. So currently, cocoa exports to the United States accounts for only about 4% of our total export value. And it is the case that has been growing significantly over the past 5 years from the year 2016. A brief calculation would show that that number has grown by an approximately 46% over the past 5 years. Some of the biggest changes that we saw in the export value happened between the year 2019 and also last year, 2020, where the export value grew from around $5 million to close the year last year at just over $13 million. But it is the case that we are not currently in cocoa season. So it is the case that in the month of August is essentially when you start seeing a light volume of cocoa coming into the market before it's then is eventually exported. It might also be the case that maybe due to some of the port delays, some of the trades that have been closed at the earlier parts of the second quarter of the year are now currently being recognized by the trade associations. But aside from the fact that cocoa is not currently in season in the country, when you're comparing prices on the exchange vis-a-vis prices, when you're comparing prices on the exchange, it's always very important to delineate that there's often a price differential between what you have between the cocoa main crop, which is what you have being produced during the cocoa production season, and then the cocoa light crop, which is essentially what comes out a few weeks before the entire season itself starts. So that, in some sense, could also have accounted for the fact that you haven't been seeing a lot of the price changes on the exchange. And with regards to the United States, a lot of their origin commodities tends to come from this, as opposed to Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana that they import from. A lot of their other commodities also tends to come from South America. So a lot of those price changes and price dynamics should essentially be reflected in the futures price and not necessarily the spot price that we have on the exchange. And it's also the case that with regards to cocoa exports from Nigeria, we only have one or two major cocoa exporters from the country, which would not necessarily, of course, in this case, be represented on the exchange. And so those are by and large some of the reasons that the price changes on the exchange. Prices haven't been changing as frequently on the exchange as we have had with the trade volumes that we have for cocoa this year.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael, because I was beginning to wonder. Well, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. But we have your colleague here talking about the theme for this year's International Youth Day, which recognizes the importance of youths to grow food systems across the world. The big question in Nigeria remains on how to activate increased youth participation in agribusiness, and that can in turn translate to thriving food systems and healthy environment. Well, FX is very much interested in this. That's why we have Stephanie Mills. Stephanie Mills is the growth manager for FX. Good to have you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. So is the level of participation of youth in agriculture as a result of the perception, and how do we change it to increase enough participation from the youth?
So yes, there's definitely a negative correlation. So we see that most youth have a perception that the agri sector is basically on high activities and that leads to less income. So, and there's a high perception that they need to have a lifestyle, and agriculture doesn't give them that income bracket. So we need to basically have a paradigm shift from traditional agriculture to more modern ways of doing this. And this mentality is basically because of the reduced education and accessibility to information to youth. But with digital disruption in every aspect, including agriculture, we see that there's been a drastic evolution in the sector. And with education and edtech solutions, we see that there's a rise. But youth participation is still low, and that is as a result of these factors.
All right, talking about education still, how can it be more accessible, for the youth so that they can, learn more about agriculture, and actually see the value, in agriculture?
So first off, we need to speak their language. So, and they also need to be involved in the policy and implementation process as well. So we see the older generation creating policies without the involvement of these youths that are supposed to take up the next generation processes, and that also affects. In getting the education accessible, we need to speak their language and come to the digital space and use technology to solve and explain agriculture in a very easy way. So take, for instance, FPace has a platform called COMEX. So basically, COMEX is a digital marketplace that enables you to trade commodities with ease. And we go a step further by giving you market data to allow you to understand what is essential in making trades and all of that. And essentially, putting your ears on the ground with government officials and watching webinars. Coincidentally, we'll be having a webinar tomorrow in celebration of the International Youth Day, which basically is going to be focusing on how youth can lend their voices in transforming food systems as well. And we carefully handpick the speakers to be able to speak to the different value chains, as we want more youth to participate in all the value chains aside from the production stage, which is why they feel that there isn't much money in the sector.
So what's the details of this webinar? How can people participate? The youths that you want, how do they get it?
Okay, yes, so they can go to our social media page, which is at COMEX by FPace. So the link is in our bio. And basically, they get access to not just knowing about the theoretical aspect of playing in the agri space, but hearing success stories for people who have done and gone through the process and are still sustaining their growth level in the sector.
So you also have the conversation of air and ocean pollution in the processing of food, in the food chain system. Obviously, we need some people to take care of this. Is there a way to attract the youth into this sector?
So like I always say, sustainability should be at the core of every sector, including agriculture. So we need to sensitize everyone in the value chain, starting from the farmers, processors, and manufacturers, to ensure that all processes are done in a sustainable manner. So let's take, for instance, the pre-production stage. In ensuring that it's more sustainable, you're sensitizing the farmers on better ways to eliminate waste. And one of our speakers is very sound in that area. She is the co-founder of Farms to You, and she's basically has used technology to be able to help farmers curate and specifically pick out crops in order to reduce waste and help them eliminate waste as well. And we also have a speaker who's also in the organic farming. And organic farming is on the rise, and this has helped to eliminate waste as well and reduce emission of CO2 in the environment. And in the distribution aspect, creating more, building more warehouses and storage facilities closer to the farmers and processors will help to reduce the emission of CO2 in the environment when you're reducing the logistic process.
All right, but how can youths make the food systems, more resilient and sustainable?
So first of all, they have to participate and be committed. So like I said, they have to, there has to be a paradigm shift, first of all, to enable them know that they need to move from the traditional agri space to the modern space. Once that paradigm shift is established, then they can go a step further with understanding that there are other ways to ensure that this is done. And we have, we've been able to create short content on our platform as well to ensure that people have access to information.
Okay, so we do hope that this webinar, we wish you success. And we hope that we see the impact, because we do have a lot of talks and meetings.
So many meetings.
Yeah, but we look forward to when the youth can actually participate. And I guess a major part of it will be to, like you said, introduce a lot of technology and digital, the digital system into it. So it's not seen as a dirty job.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not the one that they cannot live their lifestyle.
And we can see multimillionaires,
Yes. And Stephanie talked about the success stories.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's part of
we just need to make sure that youth understand that it's not just a poor man's sector. So we have rich people, billionaires, billionaires who are making it and sustaining their growth in the business.
And it's not just about going to the farm with a hoe.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you so much, Stephanie Mills. Stephanie Mills is the growth manager with FPace. Thank you so much for shedding light on activities of FPace. We'll take a moment. When we come back, we'll head to the markets. You're welcome back. Well, Airtel Africa and MTN Nigeria once again helped the market to rebound. Last week, they did the same thing. Well, I think Will knows the secret.
Good morning, Ini. I do know that it was a big rebound for the equities market, but for having secrets, I'm sure it thanks to, like you say, investors' interest in shares of Airtel Africa and MTN, up by 10 and 2.38% each. And this is not the first time Airtel Africa and MTN had boosted in the market. We saw that happen last week. Investors gained 317 billion naira as the all-share index inched higher, up by 1.58%, propelling it into the 39,000 level, and erasing the losses made in the previous session. Now we see the month-to-date gain increased to about 1.6%, while the year-to-date loss has moderated to about 2.7%. And look at the activity chart. We see that there was a significant rise in the volume value of deals transacted yesterday. And let's look at the key sectors here now. We see that the insurance, consumer goods, industrial and banking indexes recorded declines, while the oil and gas index was the lone gainer here. In terms of market breadth, the sentiment was positive as we had 21 takers gaining against 16 losers. To throw more light about what's happening in what's happening in the markets, we have Charles Fakroha, the Chief Operating Officer of Super Commercial Trust Limited. He's joining us to tell us more about that. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning.
Charles, let's just jump right into it. Airtel's African stocks has been said to be quite illiquid, and there were major sell-offs in the month of June. However, we've seen renewed interest on the buy side. What's driving this?
Yes, for Airtel Africa, you will know that it's one of the leaders in the telecom space. And since they were quoted on the NGS platform, they have not disappointed investors. So you can see that the renewed interest in the shares of Airtel is as a result of investors' confidence in the performance of the company. And you will recall sometimes Airtel had a transaction where Rice Fund invested so much, about $150 million. And this money that is coming to the group will help to reduce the group debts. At the same time, they will invest in network sales and other infrastructure. So it is because of all this that we are seeing a renewed interest in the shares of Airtel Africa.
That's Charles Fakroha, the Chief Operating Officer at Super Commercial Trust Limited. Now move over to the unlisted OTC market, where the NASD index and the market cap gains climbed higher by 0.23% to 751.41 points, and we had the market cap at 653.10 billion naira. Total volume rose considerably. Value also rose. Volume stood at 31.3 million units, while the value was at 127.53 million naira, all traded in 31 deals. And of the 7 stocks traded yesterday, the Central Securities Trading Clearing System PLC was the sole decliner. And we move over to the fixed income market. At the fixed income market, the bond market was predominantly quiet in yesterday's trading session. The average yield dropped by 6 basis points to 11.8%. And across the benchmark curve, the average yield fell at the mid and long segments following demand for the July 2030 and the July 2045 bonds, respectively. Meanwhile, average yield rose at the short end due to sell-offs. Yesterday's session at the Treasury bill market was a bit quiet as well. We saw less demand there, even the deals, we had just one deal there. Only at the CBN special bills where we had the more demand, more action there. We see a total of 40.74 billion naira being demanded, and the yield was at 10%, and all in 22 deals. Meanwhile, there will be a Treasury bills primary auction today where 57.5 billion naira will be on offer. We're hoping to see more liquidity, more maybe to see maybe a boost in interest and yields, but currently, with the situation of things, with the government borrowing externally now, sourcing funds externally, we probably will continue to see a downtrend in terms of the yields and interest rates. That's what we have for you today.
Thank you so much, Will. Well, we'll also look out to see if the special drawing rights of the IMF will have impact on the market, because we've been told, analysts have said it will bring more foreign exchange into the economy, to boost, liquidity in that area. So we'll see what it does to the market also from the 23rd of August. Thank you so much, Will. So we'll take a quick break now. When we do come back, we will be going to London. We'll speak with Juliana from our London studios. Just stay with us. It's Business Morning on Channels Television. You're welcome back. Heading straight to London now. We have Juliana. Hello, Juliana. Good morning.
Good morning, Innie.
Yeah, so it's looking bright for the travel sector in the UK. IFRA reports recovery, but they say there are still barriers. What are these barriers?
Well, gosh, there's so many barriers. One of them is coronavirus and the Delta variant, as well as restrictions that are still in place across several parts of the world. But there has been good news, which was reported this morning, that Heathrow, London's busiest airport, used to be Europe's busiest, has had its busiest month since the beginning of the pandemic. During the month of July, 1.5 million people travelled through its terminals, thanks to the simplification of UK travel rules. However, this is still 80% than what it would have experienced in 2019, when it would have had nearly 8 million people travelling through its airports trying to get a little bit of sun. But it's 75% busier than it was this time last year. So it's good. And JFK has taken back its spot of being the most popular destination for travellers. Of course, much of this has helped because of the fact that if you are double vaxxed and you are travelling from the US, you can arrive in the UK without having to vaccinate, which is why bosses this morning are really urging Washington to reciprocate the measures that have been put in place by the British government to allow British travellers, or British nationals, to travel to America without having to vaccinate. Hopefully that will come in place sometime soon.
Hopefully. And it's also good days for Deliveroo. First, their shares went up 10% after Deliver Hero acquired about 5% stake. Now their orders have doubled.
Yeah, decent update for Deliveroo this morning. This is the first update they've had since they floated on the London Stock Exchange in February. And there were concerns. One of the reasons why it was dubbed Flopperoo is because some investors were a little bit nervous about the scalability and the longevity of the online food takeaway delivery service in Britain. Because, of course, one of the reasons why it surged was because of the lockdown and the fact that over the past 18 months, people haven't really been able to enjoy themselves as much as they would in restaurants. But even though most of the restrictions, in fact, all 99% of the restrictions have been lifted here in Britain, people are still ordering. In fact, the number of orders have doubled to 148 million orders in the first half of this year. A couple of those definitely from me and my family. So it's good news for Deliveroo. They are still operating under losses, but losses have been narrowed by about a fifth. And as you said earlier this week, their share price surged 12%, the highest it's surged since the floating earlier this year, because their German rival, Delivery Hero, bought a 5% stake. So all in all, good day for Deliveroo bosses.
Yeah, well, I guess ordering is now the new way of life, is the new norm. COVID-19 has changed some norms. But lovers of potato have been warned that come Christmas, they may have to change their menu. What's going on around that?
Yeah, Innie, I can't believe it's August and we're talking about Christmas. A very, very, very British thing to do. Thank you so much for letting me talk about that period of the year. That still seems a very long way away. But it is quite a serious story. We know there's been so many devastating floods. There's been floods in the UK, but significant flooding across certain parts of Europe, and some of the potato crops that were due to be grown and exported into the UK have been damaged. And so there are some fears that perhaps those that do enjoy a lovely roast dinner with turkey and potatoes and all the other bits and pieces you get with a roast could be a cause for concern. There may be a potato rationing. According to the story, this will start with frozen chips, but it could potentially affect roast potatoes too. But there is more context to this also as well. I discussed this at the beginning of the year. Lots of farms are reporting that it's difficult for them to get European pickers. British farms relied on European pickers to come and pick their crop. They haven't been here because of Brexit and all the regulation that concerns that. So there are major issues, but we still have quite a long time, Innie. But so yeah, once again, thanks for allowing me to mention Christmas on the 11th of August. Goodness me.
Well, let's hope that before then, this will be sorted out, and then you have your chips and your roasted potato. Anyway, we'll talk to you later on today at 1:30.
Thank you.
Let's head to crypto market now. And Laddie had a wish just before we came on the show. He said he wished that he had invested in Axie Infinite because now he would have been about 70% richer than he was then.
Yeah,
unfortunately for you, Laddie, you did not make that move.
I did not, yes. 24 hours, Axie Infinity. Top gainer, the top 100, about 70% of this morning. Incredible. Market is on fire, though. See Bitcoin, Ethereum, all in the green, and top alts by market cap having double-digit gains this morning. It's looking quite good, even though we had that hack yesterday. Market cap, $1.90 trillion, is up about 2.98%, nearing the $2 trillion mark again. 24-hour volume, $111.47 billion traded. In the total crypto market, is up by 1.44%. Bitcoin dominance, 45.35%. Price Bitcoin, $45,831 at 7 a.m. this morning, up about 0.78%. 24-hour volume, $32.92 billion. You see the volume is coming in there for Bitcoin and major altcoins this morning. Price of Ethereum, $3,175, up 1.99%. Let's bring in Solomon Amunde now, digital market analyst. Hello, Solomon.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning.
Good morning. So, yeah, we had that massive DeFi hack, about $600 million on the Poly network and Binance Smart Chain and Ethereum, all affected. But it seems it's not impacting the price. You know, the market is on fire. What's going on?
Okay, basically the hack yesterday wasn't really expected. And obviously, the crypto market is worth over $1 trillion and 600 million is less than 0.1% of the overall crypto market cap. So, and we are also on a bullish trend, so it didn't really affect the market. But basically, the hack yesterday wasn't expected, and they are still trying to salvage the situation. Immediately after the hack, they sent out a message via Twitter to all miners on the different blockchain to blacklist the address, and by so doing, they were able to stop most of the funds from moving. The hacker even tried sending most of the funds to Cov.finance, a DeFi protocol, and the transactions didn't go through because of the address was already blacklisted by Theta as a bill.
Right. So, but how can, traders protect themselves from these kind of hacks?
Basically, traders trading on centralized exchanges, they are at the mercy of the exchanges because those exchanges are the ones managing the funds. While for those that have their assets on a cold storage, you're solely in charge of your funds. And for those that have their assets on most of the DeFi protocols, should there be any hack, in most cases, those protocols tend to issue back those tokens to the affected parties.
All right. So looking at top odds of market cap, I see BNB up 10%, ADA up 20%. What's pushing sentiment this morning?
Actually, BNB still hasn't moved. It's still trying to break a massive resistance. I was expecting BNB to be almost $500 right now because we've seen Bitcoin hit 46 and Ethereum hit 3,200. So everything is moving up just because Bitcoin is playing sideways right now. So once Bitcoin makes another move to $50,000, then we would find out that most of the alt would halt their movements.
Okay. All right, Solomon, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, looking at the top 5 gainers there. Yeah, that's Ini's Axie Infinity. It's up 70% this morning at $75.52. This was trading at $3 in June. Massive gain there, about 2,000% gain. RVN is also doing pretty well, giving about 40% gains every day. It's up 39% today. Holochain is at 1 cent, up 32%. HNT up about 24%. And Luna there, 22.43%. So a lot of traders are making massive gains this morning, Ini.
And you wish you were one of them?
I wish I was.
All right, well, that's it. I would say thank you so much for being a part of the show today. It was an interesting one for us, and we believe it was for you also. We'll see you at 1:30 during Business Incorporated. We'll give you updates from the world of business. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching.